Early that morning, I disembarked at the cruise terminal and made my way to downtown Boston. And on to the Godfrey Hotel. My room was actually ready and had a good view from the 10th floor. After a quick breakfast at the hotel's coffee shop, I went out exploring. Macy's store was virtually opposite the hotel. And there were sparkling decorations hung above the streets. You needed to look up to see the varied architecture. Adjoining the main shopping area is a large central park, Boston Common. It was particularly busy as there were various walks and activities raising money for St Jude's Hospice, which helped children with cancer. Up by Park Street Church is the Massachusetts State House. There are various monuments close by. I continued my walk past the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, to the Boston Tea Party Museum. In the afternoon, I followed the Freedom Trail, starting at Park Street Church, which is next to the Granary Burial Ground, where Benjamin Franklin and Paul Revere are buried. The trail continued to the Old South Meeting House, close to the Boston Massacre site, and the King's Chapel. Statues of Josiah Quincy and Benjamin Franklin can be found outside the Old City Hall. Moving on to the Old State House and down to Faneuil Hall and Quincy Market. A longer walk now past an 18th century tavern to Paul Revere's house and his monument with the Old North Church in the background, where the lanterns were lit to say the English were coming. At the top of the hill was Cop Hill Burial Site, complete with the Boston stump. And on to Bunker Hill and the Boston National Historic Park with the USS Constitution Museum. Then it was a ferry back to the centre. And a walk past the Customs House Tower, now in land as lots of docks have been filled in, back to my hotel. At 7:15 the next morning, I joined a minibus tour which would take me to Plymouth, where the Pilgrim Fathers landed in 1620. We would call at some other historical sites on our way. So, leaving Boston, we travelled through some posher residential areas, making our way to the town of Quincy, where on the outskirts we arrived at our first historical site, Peacefield, where John Adams, the second president, and his son John Quincy Adams, the sixth president, lived for many years. In the town of Quincy itself, we saw a statue of Governor John Hancock, one of the first signatures and certainly the most prominent on the Declaration of Independence. This is the graveyard where the Adamses were buried, though later moved to a tomb in the church. Here we have John Adams's birthplace, and behind me, John Quincy Adams' birthplace. Moving on, we were making our way to the coast. Arriving at the beach at Cohasset, a somewhat expensive place to live with houses worth over $6 million. The next place was Scituate. On the outskirts of Plymouth stands the National Monument to the Forefathers, on which John Alden's name is inscribed in the list of names. A little further along, and we eventually reach our destination of Plymouth. Plymouth Rock, 1620. Chief Massasoit welcomed the pilgrims, and here is the grave of bones of those who didn't make it. The Mayflower 2 is an exact replica of Mayflower 1, made by the British. It sailed across to Plymouth and was gifted to America. This is where the settlers actually settled after earlier, more simplistic buildings. The town of Plymouth itself. Outside the town is an outdoor museum of how the original settlement probably looked. Here is the fort that protected the houses, and here are the houses with vegetable patches and livestock compounds. And this is the last place we visited before returning directly to Boston.